that when looking closer into these programs, they do not always appear to achieve their purpose. Now speaking on sex education, please welcome Audrea. Okay, hi. You guys may be thinking, hey Audrea, sex. Yeah, penis. So, you're laughing, but would you have gotten the same effect if I had said elbow? Like, no. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get the sex education they need. And sex education can teach people about their bodies and how to have safe sex. But with things like abstinence-only sex education, they're not getting the education they need, and they're not having safe sex. All right. Well, here's some graphs. Here are the states that don't require sex education, and that's a lie. The red states. Notice that Maryland isn't on there. Like, way to go, Maryland. Here are the states where if sex and HIV education are given, they don't have to be medically accurate. Alright. Here are the states where if sex education is provided, they must include information on abstinence but not contraceptives. And, whoops, this is really scary. Like, this is terrifying. They must include information about abstinence. I don't know if you've ever been taught abstinence-only sex education, but they use scare tactics, and those are proven not to be effective. Having sex education that's abstinence-only is kind of like having driver's ed, where they only teach you about accidents. And they tell you that the safest form of driving is to not drive. I guess technically correct, but no, just no. I think the reason why people want abstinence-only sex education is because they're afraid that if kids are educated about sex, then they're going to go out and have sex, when honestly, if kids are going to want to have sex, they're going to go out and have sex. The only thing we can do is to educate them and provide the information that they need so they can have safe sex and they can protect themselves. There's a lot of shame and stigma surrounding sex. You guys are probably kind of uncomfortable when I said penis. Imagine what happens when I talk about actual sex. And when you're uncomfortable about even hearing the word penis or vagina or vulva, you're not gonna ask questions because you're too scared to. And when you're too scared to, you're not gonna get the answers you need. And when you don't get the answers, you probably are not going to be having the safe sex that you need. Alright. I remember there was a billboard going down the highway into Baltimore that said virgin is not a bad word. I was uncomfortable, maybe because I was like 6, but looking back I realized that it's not that I was uncomfortable with the message, I was uncomfortable with the idea of even something in so public talking about sex. And that shouldn't happen. I shouldn't have been afraid to even look at anything related to sex. Also, virgin is not a bad word. When I took sex ed at Dulaney, I learned about all the contraceptives and I learned about all the STDs, but I feel like I still didn't know everything I needed to know. I knew that there were condoms, in condoms, diaphragms, sponges, spermicide, stuff that people probably don't even use. But I still didn't know how to put on a condom, which is basic sex education. I learned about all the STDs I could have gotten. Scare tactic. But still, I didn't exactly know what sex was. Like, if you're going to teach sex ed and your students don't know what sex is, you might as well not teach it at all. Or, well, you should teach it, but it's not as effective. So, here's more statistics. So, when kids are curious, when kids are curious about sex, they're probably too ashamed to go and ask their parents, or ask a teacher, or maybe ask their friends, so they're going to go online. And the websites that they may use, 46% of them aren't accurate. So if they're not getting accurate information, which they think is accurate, then they're not going to be having safe sex, which is extremely damaging. Among teens 18 to 19, 41% report that they know little or nothing about condoms, and condoms are the #1 leading form of sexual and contraceptive. 75% say they know little to nothing about the pill. Scary, scary stats. I remember when I finally worked up the courage to ask someone what sex was, they said, "You're perverted. Get out of here." And I said, "Thanks, Mom." So I went on reliable websites. These are just some websites that I use to educate myself. Those are actually mine. But these websites have age-appropriate and conclusive information about sex. So if you're too scared to come up to me and be like, "Hey, Audrea, what's a vulva?" You can go onto these websites, or if you do come up to me and be like, "Hey, Audrea, what's a vulva?" I'll be like, "I got you." Or actually, first I'd be like, "Who are you?" And then second I'd be like, "I got you." I actually created my own Tumblr about age-appropriate sex information. And if you have any questions, you can email me at askaudrea@gmail.com. I'm Audrea. Stay curious.